is it possible that low amino acid metabolites can mean that you utilize them well? I guess, but when they're low, like below one standard deviation below, or more than one standard deviation below, when it's outside the box on the low side, I tend to, and there's a lot of them, I tend to think that they're not absorbing well. And again, it has to correlate with the person's clinical condition. If it does, then you know, hey, I better improve the digestion. If they're utilizing them well, I would think it'd be more that the findings, the majority would be within the average range. Okay, so that's the way I've been looking at it. And usually, if I'm treating leaky gut syndrome, I'm usually seeing that. Speaking of which, leaky gut syndrome, which is kind of euphemistic, is your gut simply not working well. It means that you're not digesting well, that antigens, and if you don't digest well, just take a protein. If you're not breaking it down to its constituent amino acids, what are you breaking it down to? Usually short chain proteins, which are antigens. They go through any holes that have been created, usually from either some kind of bug or stress and so forth. And the immune system starts reacting to those antigens. Okay, it starts creating a lot of antibodies. And as time goes on, it gets worse and worse. And all that antigen antibody reaction is basically inflammation. So the first thing you see with leaky gut is food intolerances, immune disruption, autoimmunity, and then dysautonomia, which is kind of worse. Now, why do I harp on leaky gut all the time? Because I wrote a book on it? Yeah. Okay. Elizabeth and I wrote a book on it. Okay. Leaky gut, leaky cells, leaky brain. But you can't get the immune system and all its memory cells to have just stop. What you have to do is seal the gut. So here's that risk-benefit factor again. There are tests for leaky gut, but I don't like them. I'll tell you why. Because they're not exact. And the worst thing, in my opinion, is if somebody has leaky gut and they're told that they don't and they don't treat it. Because the inflammation will just keep building and building and building and building. And that's what we're always fighting, chronic inflammation. So if I treat my patient for leaky gut, and what I'm doing is giving them digestive enzymes, I'm giving them stuff to recreate a mucus layer, giving them some butyrate, usually to help the cells heal, and I may or may not use probiotics right away. Where is the danger in that? Not much. And the probability of benefit is quite high. But if you're told that you don't have leaky gut, and you do, and you do everything else, while this inflammation is constantly building, the person will never get better. So anybody who's got a chronic illness most probably has leaky gut, and it's not dangerous to treat them. I think, in my opinion, it's more dangerous not to treat them. So that's my shtick on leaky gut. And that was a very simplified answer, but if you seal the gut, so those antigens can't get through and they get stuck in the mucus like they're supposed to, and secretory IgA comes out and grabs them and ties them up, hog ties them and drags them out, you'll drop that patient's inflammation. If you do it properly, you can drop that patient's inflammation by 50, 80% in a month or two. I've seen it happen. Not usual, but I've seen it happen. It usually takes 3, 4, 5 months. But you'll start dropping, and once you start dropping their inflammation, they're going to start getting better, because then their body's energy, right, is not going to be spent fighting the inflammation. It's going to be spent healing the body. Okay, the body only has a certain amount of energy to use. If it's being used consistently to deal with the downstream effects, you'll never heal. You've got to consider what's causing the body to fight, what you can do to help it to fight. And that it always includes getting vitamins and minerals into the cells. Why do I say it that way? Into the cells. Because when you take a tablet, it doesn't break apart that easily. Okay? Take a capsule. If it's going to the gastrointestinal tract and you've got GI problems, like most people do, it's got to get absorbed, go through the liver a couple of times, get released in circulation, and then hopefully get to the cells. Okay, good luck. If you use a liposomal product, which gets directly into the cells, and you get a multimineral, multivitamin liposomal product, That'll get into the cells, and that person will start getting better because they have those cofactors and coenzymes to run their body's engines. Okay, there's a lot more to this, but just basically, that's what you want to do. And treat the leaky gut. You've got like half of it, if not 3/4 of it, taken care of, because what you're doing now is giving the body what it needs to actually function, and taking care of what's been feeding the inflammation over time. It's one of those things like a forest fire. Once you have leaky gut and the inflammation get bigger and bigger and bigger, then it's just going to keep on going on its own. Okay, so you got to interrupt it. How to fix the leaky gut? Which probiotic? Okay, I'm going to give you the way that I do it. There are other ways. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to Amazon.com, and if you have a Kindle, for about £7, you can buy my book, Gut, Leaky Cell, Leaky Brains. Elizabeth and I worked about 2 years on it, and it's very, very simple. It borders that complex and simple, puts it really easy. Okay, so fixing leaky gut. First thing I do is always make sure that I'm giving somebody vitamins and minerals that can get absorbed easily, preferably liposomal. The next thing will be liquid. Okay, so humic and fulvic acid minerals work very, very well. They're also broad spectrum. If you can't get a liposomal product, a liquid product is the next best thing. Beyond that is powders. Beyond that is capsules. Beyond that is tablets. Tablets are the worst, because if you have any digestive problems, you're just not going to break them down. I have x-rays of people, calcium. And I thought they had tumors. It was the calcium pills, because I brought one out and like, nope, calcium pill. Okay, they never broke down. So I always want to make sure people are getting that. Now, the gut has a mucus layer. The purpose of the mucus layer is to trap antigens and trap gunk. And we have secretory IgA, which is an immunoglobulin that comes over and ties it up. Okay, so it can't do anything. And then because the mucus moves out consistently, all right, it's going to go out in the feces. The next layer is a layer of cells that look like this, okay, with little fingers. Okay, the reason for the fingers is it increases the surface area. If there's a lot of inflammation, the fingers, it'll just puff up, and that's what it's going to kind of look like this. When a cell, they always talk about the tight junctions here. When one of the cells gets injured and starts dying, this is what happens. And the tight junctions separate, and that's where the antigens can get in. Then white blood cells come in, and we think that they go in and clean up the area like the Merry Maids. They don't. They go in like SWAT and tear up everything, and it leaves a nice separation that the body will just put together. Before antibiotics and stuff, if you had a skin infection, the doctor would cut the infection out and slap the two pieces of meat together, and it would heal. You'd have a scar, but it would heal. Same thing here. The body will put it together. But when it happens a lot, because of pathogens and so forth, too much of it is happening for the body to heal. And a lot of antigens are getting through, and that's creating antigen-antibody reactions, and the more and more inflammation, So you want to recreate the mucus layer. How do you do that? Several ways. You can use fructooligosaccharides, slippery elm, chia seed ground up, inulin. Okay, those are fructooligosaccharides, and you use a lot of it. Okay, I used to have people on 12 capsules a day of slippery elm, or make a slippery elm gruel. Okay, that they could take, and it's called a demulcent herb. It turns into mucus very quickly. Okay, another type would be the XOS, alto-oligosaccharides, and GOS, which is galacto-oligosaccharides. There's a company that makes the XOS GOS. It's a kind of a chewable. You can put that in Amazon. You'll see the company. The nice thing about that is most people haven't been exposed to that stuff, so they don't get reactions. And two, you don't need as much of it to get the same result. So you may only need 2 or 4 of those chewables a day. Okay. The next one is called sialic acid, which is also mucin, and it's a particular product. I'm not supposed to mention the product, so look up sialic acid, SIALIC acid, and you'll see the product name. I tend to use that because a lot of people are allergic to a lot of stuff. Most people haven't been exposed to this. So what do I mean by that? A while ago, if you wanted to get your phospholipids for your cell membranes, you would use like lecithin. And there's 3 kinds of lecithin. There's soy, sunflower, and egg. Most people were allergic to soy. Most people were allergic to egg. 20 years ago, we started using sunflower lecithin, you know, but that got so popular that people had sunflower lecithin in a lot of stuff, and if they were going to develop allergies to it, they did. Think about the jabs that have PEG, polyethylene glycol, in it. Some people get the jab and they have an anaphylactic reaction. Why is that? Because PEG, which is a derivative of antifreeze, by the way, has been allowed to be put in foods to keep them moist. Okay, our FDA says, oh, that's good for human consumption. Nonsense. So they've been getting little bits and pieces of PEG over time and have developed an allergy to it. They just didn't know it. Okay, they weren't getting enough of it to evoke a reaction. But then they get an injection right into the bloodstream, and all of a sudden this massive reaction happens. That's how that happens. Now, to help the cells heal, you can use butyrate, and there's a lot of butyrates out there. I'm going to tell you the kind that I like the best. Butyrate, there's in capsules, there's liquids. Capsules, if you should open the capsule, oh gosh, it'll smell like a dead body that has been dragged into your house and left there to degrade over a couple of weeks. It's a horrible smell. And, you know, if it, there's something called tributyrin, and there's a couple of products with tributyrin in it. And that's a butyrate that has been fashioned into a triglyceride. Why do I like that? Because number one, it has no smell. Okay, so especially if you have to work with a kid, once you get a lot of inflammation, they're going to have multiple chemical sensitivities. Just the smell is going to turn them off. They can take this, and it distributes the butyrate throughout the entire small and large intestine. That works fairly well. There are a couple of products out there that have it in it. Some of it's just called tributyrin. Okay, and 1 or 2 of them a day is just good. If you do a GI map, if you have the information, and you can see that at first the gut will be hyperactive. The immune system in the gut will be hyperactive. But after a long period of time, it becomes hypoactive. You can tell that by looking at the SIGA, the secretory IgA. If it's super low, then that immune system's not working very well. If that should be, you want to add in Mega IgG 2000. But there's several products out there that are SBI, which is the big one thing I just said. The research on that has been done with HIV patients, and that stuff actually healed their gut and got their immune system just going again. So if you know that that immune system is low, that's something you want to add in. But if the immune system is hyperactive, you don't want to add that in. And your probiotics, I have ones that I kind of prefer, but I can't mention names. I like real basic, if I'm going to use probiotics, and I don't always, especially if they have SIBO or something like that. Anything that is kind of a general lactobacillus and bifidobacteria product, it's kind of a balance, is a good way to start. It isn't always necessary. One of the products I'm thinking about has peri and postbiotic in it that actually feeds your resident microbiome, and that has been working very well. Wish I could mention the name. But put the kind of things, tributyrin and prebiotic, postbiotic, and you'll get the name. And it's like 1 capsule a day, and it works really well. I used to use gut butter, and formulation and so forth. Almost never use it anymore because people have to put it together, and it gets to be a little bit time-consuming. And the harder you make it for somebody to work to follow your treatment program, the less they're going to cooperate with it. The easier you make it, the more cooperation you'll get.